Come for Christmas, Grandpa. We want you with us. I came. The bus ride was long, the air sharp enough to slice breath in half. My knees ached from the cold, but my heart kept me standing on their porch. Warren's new house looked like something out of a real estate commercial. Neat, gray, modern, soulless. I rang the bell once, twice. Silence. I called. Voicemail. Kendra's bright voice chirped, "Leave a message! We love you!" And that made me smile for a second until I realized I was leaving a message from their doorstep. Through the frosted window, I could see their Christmas tree tall, perfect, factory-made perfection. No macaroni ornaments from when Warren was 5. No crooked star eulalie glued back together after it broke. Just sterile beauty. Snow kept falling, wrapping everything in quiet. I was about to step away when I noticed the curb 4 cardboard boxes, sagging under a wet sign that read, "Free." On top lay Eulalie's quilt, the one she stitched with trembling hands before her fingers gave up. The one she said would keep our family together long after she was gone. My heart stuttered. I bent down, brushed off the snow, and saw my name written on a label inside the box. Old stuff from Harlan. I should have walked away, but I opened the box instead, and what I found inside made me understand why no one answered that door. The box smelled like old paper and peppermint, the scent of every Christmas morning we ever had. Inside, tangled between photo albums and yellowed letters, was my old Santa hat. The same one I wore every year, even after Warren turned 16 and rolled his eyes so hard I thought they'd get stuck. I pulled it out, shook the snow off, and laughed quietly. The pom-pom was missing, probably eaten by their fancy vacuum. Eulalie used to sew it back every year, grumbling that it made me look like a lost elf with a pension. Beneath the hat, I found a framed picture. Our family, me, Eulalie, Warren, and little Lucy, all in matching sweaters that looked like they'd been knitted by an optimistic spider. My smile in that photo could have powered the porch lights. But now, the glass was cracked, and someone had used the frame to wedge a door open. There was still a chip of wood in the corner. I looked up at their house, lights twinkling, laughter faint behind the walls. I could almost hear Kendra's voice saying, "Let's just put the old stuff out, he won't notice." Well, I noticed. Oh, I noticed everything. Still, I wasn't angry yet, not really. I felt like a ghost who'd shown up early to his own haunting. So I sat right there on the curb, in the slush, wearing my half-dead Santa hat, and whispered, "Merry Christmas, kiddo." A car drove by and honked, probably thought I was a lost mall Santa waiting for a sleigh Uber. And that's when I saw movement in the window, a shape pulling the curtain, peeking out, then vanishing. Someone inside had seen me. They just chose not to open the door. I froze, mid-smile, like a kid caught sneaking cookies. Someone had looked out. A shadow thin, quick, just a flutter of a sleeve. Maybe Kendra's. I waved. Because what else does an old fool do in a snowstorm when his own family hides behind lace? I even gave my best Santa chuckle, the one I used to scare the neighbor's cat with. No response. The curtain swayed a little, then stilled, like an eyelid that decided it had seen enough. I waited. 30 seconds. A minute. 5. My knees began muttering about union rights. I told them to hush. Then, just as I was about to knock again, a motion sensor light over the garage blinked on. Warm, golden hopeful. I smiled, and then it went off. Blink. On again. Off. The stupid thing was having a nervous breakdown. I laughed out loud. "Even your lights don't know what to do with me," I muttered. I turned to the boxes again. A small tin clanged as I shifted them. Inside was Eulalie's cookie cutter shaped like a reindeer that never survived the oven intact. I remembered her laughing. "They all end up legless like your poker friends." I chuckled, even as my throat stung. From the side of the house came a noise quiet, metallic. The trash can lid lifting. I stood, peered around the corner, half expecting a raccoon. Instead, there was Warren, my son, in slippers and a robe, hair wild, holding a garbage bag like a peace treaty. He froze when he saw me. Dad? I nodded. In the flesh. A little frostbitten, but mostly flesh. He didn't smile. Just stared. Guilty and small. Then he said the line that melted whatever dignity I had left. Dad, you weren't supposed to come today. And that's when I realized I hadn't been invited for Christmas. I'd been scheduled. I blinked at him, trying to process that one word, scheduled. Like I was a delivery or a dentist appointment that got moved to next week. My hand, still clutching the hat, started to tremble, so I shoved it into my coat pocket before the sadness showed. Didn't your text say Christmas? I asked. My voice came out steady, the kind of steady that only old men and guilty priests can manage. Warren sighed, glancing back toward the house like he hoped it might swallow him whole. We meant Christmas Eve, Dad. Kendra's parents are here now. You know how crowded it gets. I looked at the driveway. 2 cars. A mansion. Size garage. Yeah, I said softly. Real tight fit for family, huh? He shifted his weight, the way he used to when he was a boy caught sneaking cookies before dinner. Except now, the cookies were his conscience. I didn't want to bother you, he said. It's just, they brought their dog and you're allergic. Son, I cut him off. The only thing I'm allergic to is being treated like junk mail. For a moment, he almost smiled. Almost. Then the door opened and Kendra appeared glowing, polite, all Christmas sweater and no warmth. Oh, Mr. Harlan, she said, using my first name like I was the plumber. You came early. I nodded. Yeah, my clock must be broken. It still runs on respect. She froze, then recovered with the grace of a politician. Well, maybe you can come by tomorrow instead? The guest room isn't... I laughed. Couldn't help it. Tomorrow? Sweetheart, I've been chasing tomorrow since my wife died. They don't come. For a heartbeat, the porch fell silent. Even the snow seemed to stop mid-air. Warren's mouth opened, but before he could speak, Kendra cleared her throat. Let's at least get you a ride home. It's cold. I looked at them, my son and his well-pressed life, and said, Don't worry, I've got somewhere warm to go. I turned toward the boxes, picked up the one with the quilt, and added, I just didn't know it'd be outside your house. As I walked away, I heard her whisper sharply, I told you he'd just show up unannounced! And Warren's reply, quiet, hollow. He used to live here. He still thinks he belongs. They were right about one thing. I did belong, just not to them anymore. The nearest motel was one of those places that looked allergic to joy-flickering sign, cracked ice machine, and a lobby that smelled faintly of old socks and new disappointment. The clerk didn't even look up from his crossword. Single room? He asked. Unless you got a family-size special for abandoned grandpas, I said. He blinked. That a joke? Half of one. The room had 2 lamps, one dead, one dying, and a heater that wheezed like an asthmatic accordion. I set the box on the bed, spread Eulalie's quilt over the blanket, which looked like it had seen things no blanket should. I sat down, letting the silence settle around me like dust. From the box, I took out one of Eulalie's old nativity figures, the wooden Joseph one, carved in '78, with a crooked smile and a nose too big. I set him on the nightstand beside the blinking lamp. Well, Joe, I muttered. Looks like we're both sleeping in a stable this year. I laughed, actually laughed until my chest hurt. The absurdity of it all. 76 years old, sitting in a budget motel on Christmas Eve, arguing with a wooden Joseph. If Eulalie were here, she'd have said, At least you're finally traveling light. I tried to call Warren again. Straight to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. What could I say? Hey son, the shepherd's fine, but the wise men didn't make it. I lay back, staring at the ceiling stain shaped like Florida. That's when it hit me. Maybe this was what getting old really meant, not losing your strength, but losing your place in people's plans. Still, as I turned off the flickering lamp, I whispered, Merry Christmas, Eulalie. You'd laugh at all this. And maybe I imagined it, but for a split second, I swear I heard her chuckle back the same laugh that always made even the worst moments feel like a punchline. I smiled in the dark, not knowing that the next morning, I'd wake up to something that would change everything. The motel's heater gave up sometime before dawn, probably out of sympathy. I woke up to see my breath doing small ghost dances above me. The first thing I saw was Joseph still grinning on the nightstand like he'd just won the lottery. "You're too cheerful for a man who's been stuck in a box for 15 years, I told him. I shuffled to the window. The world outside looked half asleep, dusted in powdered sugar snow. Then, just as I thought I was the only soul awake, I saw movement, a woman in a red coat walking across the parking lot, clutching a paper bag and a coffee cup that steamed like salvation. At first, I thought she was lost. Then, she looked right at me, waved, and I realized it was Lucy, my granddaughter. I nearly tripped over my shoe. She knocked on the door, grinning wide enough to melt Antarctica. "Grandpa, I told them you'd come anyway." "Lucy," I breathed, my throat tight. "You found me." She shrugged. "Wasn't hard. You're the only person in town who still takes the 6 a.m. bus." She held up the bag. "I brought muffins, the good kind, from the place with the rude lady you like." I laughed, God. It felt good to laugh with someone human again. "Ah, yes, Patty the pastry witch. Still as charming as ever?" "Ruder than ever," Lucy said proudly. "I told her they were for you, and she said, 'Tell him I'm still single.'" I almost dropped the muffin. "You're kidding." "Nope," said she misses how you used to wink at her like you were ordering pie and sin. We both laughed until my stomach hurt. It was ridiculous, absurd even, but in that drafty motel room, with the heater coughing and Joseph grinning from the table, it felt like Christmas again. When we finally caught our breath, Lucy grew quiet. "Mom and Dad don't know I'm here," she said softly. "They said you'd understand." "Understand what?" I asked. She looked at me, eyes shimmering like Eulalie's once did. "That sometimes people forget what family's supposed to mean." I didn't have an answer, so I broke the silence, the only way I knew how I bit into a muffin the size of my fist, and said through the crumbs, "Well, kid, that's why God invented second chances and blueberry." She laughed again, and in that sound, I swear I heard Eulalie too. But when Lucy handed me an envelope with shaky hands, my smile faltered. "Grandpa," she whispered, "Dad wanted me to give you this in case you showed up." The envelope was wrinkled, the way guilt always is when it tries to look formal. My name was scrawled across it, Dad, the kind of handwriting that used to belong to birthday cards and Father's Day doodles. Lucy watched me like a detective watching the suspect open a confession. I tore it gently, because old men and old paper both break easily. Inside was a check, $500, folded neatly, as if that made it warmer. "Dad," the note began, "I know things have been tense. I just wanted you to have something nice for the holidays. Maybe get yourself a new coat. Merry Christmas, Warren." I read it twice. The words sounded like apology trying to wear a tuxedo, but the tuxedo didn't fit. Lucy looked uneasy. "He meant well, Grandpa." "I know," I said, forcing a smile. "He always does. Your father's made a career out of meaning well." She chuckled nervously. "You're not mad?" "Mad? No. I'm touched." I held the check up to the light. "It's not every day your kid gives you hush money for Christmas." Lucy gasped. "Grandpa!" I grinned. "What? I'll frame it!" From my son, who loves me enough to keep me quiet till Easter. She laughed, despite herself, covering her mouth. "You're terrible." "Terribly honest," I said, slipping the check back into the envelope. "You know, when your grandma was alive, she'd say money can't buy happiness, but she never mentioned it could rent disappointment by the hour." Lucy shook her head, smiling. Then her expression softened. "You know, he still talks about you. Says you were the strongest man he ever knew." I looked at the floor, my eyes catching Joseph's crooked grin again. "Then I guess strength skips a generation." Lucy touched my hand gently. "He'll come around, Grandpa. He just forgets who he was when you're not there to remind him." I squeezed her hand. "Well, maybe it's time someone reminded him." She tilted her head. "You mean?" I nodded. "Let's pay your old man a visit. I've got a coat, a conscience, and 500 reasons to return the favor." Lucy blinked. "You're joking." I smiled. "Sweetheart, at my age, revenge and comedy are the same hobby." Lucy drove her old red hatchback like it was auditioning for a midlife crisis. The heater blasted air that smelled faintly of wet mittens and cinnamon gum, and the radio hummed some carol that sounded like the singer owed money to joy itself. I sat in the passenger seat, clutching the envelope. You know, I said, $500 is impressive. That's almost half a forgiveness. Lucy snorted. Don't start trouble, Grandpa. I don't start it, I said, pointing at the glove box. I just show up when it's already wrapped in gift paper. We passed the bakery, the church, and the town's sad excuse for a Christmas tree. A lopsided pine that looked like it had survived 3 divorces. The closer we got to Warren's neighborhood, the quieter Lucy became. You sure you want to do this? She asked finally. Lucy, I said. When you reach my age, you stop waiting for people to do right by you. You just bring the rightness with you, preferably before lunch. When we pulled up to the house, I felt my pulse slow, not out of fear, just remembering. I used to stand right there on that porch, teaching Warren how to hammer his first nail. He hit his thumb more than the wood, and Eulalie laughed so hard she spilled lemonade all over the plans. Now there were new wind chimes, new curtains, new everything except me. Stay here, I told Lucy. If it gets ugly, you can pretend you're an Uber driver who made a wrong turn. She grinned nervously. Grandpa, you're not going to punch him, are you? Punch him? I said. I can barely open a jar of pickles. No, I'm just going to open his memory. I climbed the porch steps slowly, each creak sounding like a word I never got to say. I rang the bell. Warren opened the door barefoot, half dressed and half guilty. Dad? What are you? I handed him the envelope. I came to return your Christmas gift. It didn't fit. He frowned. What are you talking about? The coat money, I said. Turns out, I already have something warm. Her name's Lucy. Warren blinked, confused. Then Lucy waved from the car, and his face drained of color. Dad, you didn't have to. I didn't, I said, smiling faintly. I wanted to. Then I took Eulalie's quilt from the back seat and held it out. Remember this? You used to hide under it when thunder scared you. You said it made you feel safe. He stared at it, silent. Well, I said softly, it's still good at keeping people warm. You just forgot how. Lucy cracked the window, grinning. Want me to play dramatic music, Grandpa? I laughed. Only if it's something petty. Maybe a slow jazz version of You Should Have Called Your Father. For a long minute, Warren just stood there, looking at that quilt like it was a ghost. His lips moved, but no sound came out, the kind of silence that usually ends with either an apology or an ambulance. Finally, he whispered, I thought Mom got rid of that. She did, I said. By dying. You just finished the job. He winced. Dad, that's not fair. Neither is growing old alone, I said. Then, before my heart turned crueler, I added gently, You remember what your mother used to say? A family that forgets is colder than December. He rubbed the back of his neck, staring at the snow. I didn't mean to hurt you. That's the problem with people our age, I said, folding the quilt over my arm. We all think good intentions are like seatbelts. They'll save us no matter how bad we crash. Lucy leaned out the car window. That was deep, Grandpa. Want me to write that down for your memoir? I grinned. Title it Still Not Dead. Still Disappointed. Warren almost smiled, almost. Dad, he said quietly, I don't know how to fix this. You start by opening the door next time I knock, I said. And maybe invite me in before I turn into a porch popsicle. He laughed, awkward and wet-eyed. You always have to make a joke out of everything, huh? Son, if I didn't, your mother would haunt me for being boring. A gust of wind whipped through the yard, snatching a few flakes off the railing. Warren shivered, then said, Come in, Dad, please. I shook my head. Not yet. I didn't come for pity cocoa. I handed him the quilt. Keep this. You might need it. Your house looks warm, but your marriage sounds cold. He blinked. What? Oh, don't look surprised, I said with a sly grin. That curtain twitch last night wasn't you. He froze, jaw tightening. You saw that? Yep, and I may be old, but I know when someone's hiding behind lace. Let's just say, son, some ghosts are alive and wearing perfume. Lucy snorted so hard she nearly honked the horn. Grandpa? She wheezed. That's savage. Wisdom, kid, I said, turning toward the car. Wisdom usually sounds like savagery to people who deserve it. But just as I stepped off the porch, Warren called out, Dad! Wait. I stopped. He swallowed hard. Would you stay for dinner tonight? Just us. No guests. No pretending. I looked at him for a long time, then smiled. That depends, son. You still got Mom's recipe for cinnamon roast? He nodded slowly. I kept it. Good, I said. Then maybe there's still something worth keeping after all. That night, his kitchen smelled like memory cinnamon roast, burnt edges, and apology. Warren hovered by the oven, as if guilt could be basted. He wore an apron that said, Grill Sergeant, which made me laugh because the man once burned soup. Still undercooking or overcompensating? I asked. He shot me a look. Just like you, Dad, a little overdone around the edges. Careful, I said. Sarcasm's hereditary. You'll end up quoting me at your therapist. Lucy snorted behind her soda. You two sound like a sitcom no one asked for. Perfect, I said. We'll call it 2 Generations, 1 Regret. For a while, we just ate. No fancy table, no forced toast, just the clink of forks and the hum of the heater. It felt human again. Then, out of nowhere, Warren said, You know, Mom used to hum while she cooked. I forgot that sound until tonight. I set my fork down. She hummed because it was the only way to drown out me telling bad jokes. He smiled faintly. She used to say you were her favorite noise. Something inside me cracked the good kind of crack, like ice giving way to water. You know, I said. Your mother's biggest fear was that we'd stop talking after she was gone. She said silence between family is how loneliness gets its mail delivered. He swallowed, eyes glossy. She was right. I've been sending you a lot of letters lately, I chuckled. Yeah, postage due on every one of them. Lucy wiped her eyes, grinning. You two are impossible. Genetics, sweetheart, I said. You'll inherit the stubbornness. I just hope you spend it better. We sat there long after the plates were empty. The house was quiet, but not cold. Even the wind outside seemed to settle down, as if it realized it wasn't needed tonight. When I finally stood to leave, Warren walked me to the door. Dad, he said softly, thank you for showing up, even when I didn't deserve it. I smiled. Son, the trick to love at my age is simple. You just keep showing up until someone remembers why they asked you to. He laughed, hugged me tight, and whispered, Merry Christmas, Dad. As I stepped out into the snow, I looked up at the window, the same one where a curtain had once twitched. This time, it didn't hide anyone. It waved just a soft ripple, like Eulalie herself had finally exhaled. The snow had stopped pretending to fall gently. It came down in thick, lazy flakes that looked like forgiveness trying to find a landing spot. I didn't mind. My boots squeaked in rhythm, and for the first time in years, that sound didn't feel lonely. It felt earned. The motel wasn't far, but I took the long way past the old library, the diner where Eulalie and I once argued about whose turn it was to pay for pie, and the park bench that still leaned a little to the left, like it was tired of gossip. A young couple walked by, holding hands. The boy whispered something, and the girl laughed, tilting her head back just like Eulalie used to. My chest ached, but the good kind. The kind that says, you lived something real once. I passed the store window filled with mannequins in matching sweaters, and I caught my reflection between them, an old man with windburned cheeks, hair like winter grass, eyes still awake. Not bad for someone the family tried to donate, I muttered. Inside, a salesgirl waved cheerfully. I waved back, and she probably thought I was lost. Maybe I was, but only geographically. Back at the motel, Joseph was still smiling from the nightstand. You'll never believe it, I told him. They invited me to dinner, and no one called the cops. He, being a block of wood, was impressed. I sat on the bed, wrapped myself in Eulalie's quilt, and found one last thing in the box I hadn't noticed before. A little ornament, wooden and crooked, painted by a child's hand. On the back, written in shaky marker, it said, To Dad, for when I grow up. I stared at it until my eyes blurred. Warren must have made it when he was 6. Back when growing up didn't mean growing away. Looks like you finally did grow up, kid, I whispered. Took you a few decades and one freezing father, but you got there. Then I laughed loud, full, the kind that rattles the ribs. The kind Eulalie used to call my stubborn joy. And as I turned off the light, I thought, maybe that's what Christmas really is. Not gifts, or plans, or perfection, just the small miracle of still showing up, even when the world forgets your address. I smiled in the dark. Merry Christmas, Eulalie, I said softly. You can stop worrying. The boy finally opened the door. I woke up to sunlight spilling through the thin motel curtains, like someone had finally paid the light bill in heaven. For the first time in months, my back didn't ache like a broken promise. Maybe forgiveness works better than aspirin. I shuffled to the door, opened it, and nearly tripped over a box, smaller than the one I'd brought, tied with a red ribbon that looked too confident for a motel doorstep. On top, a note in familiar handwriting. For when you come back next Christmas, love, Warren and Lucy. I smiled so hard my face creaked. Inside was a thermos of coffee, still warm, a scarf that smelled suspiciously like Kendra's perfume, and a framed photo, the 3 of them standing by the tree, with a space left beside them. Literally, an empty chair, my chair. Well, I said, sipping the coffee. They finally learned the art of composition. I sat on the step, wrapped in my quilt, and watched a few kids pelt each other with snowballs across the street. One shouted, "You missed!" And the other yelled back, "I wasn't aiming for you!" Which, come to think of it, could have been the motto for half the things parents and children do to each other. I laughed, shaking my head. Life's funny, Eulalie, I said quietly. You spend years trying to make them listen, then one day they do, and it scares the silence right out of you. A car horn honked. It was Lucy's red hatchback, dusted with snow. She rolled down the window and shouted, "Grandpa, we're doing leftovers for breakfast. You coming, or are you just gonna flirt with the snow again?" I waved. "Depends. Do the leftovers include forgiveness?" She grinned. "Only if you bring your jokes." "Kid," I said, climbing in. "I never travel without them." As we drove off, the motel shrank behind us, a bad memory with good coffee. The road ahead glittered, white and endless, like the world had hit refresh. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like someone's forgotten invitation. I felt like someone's reason to celebrate. Their kitchen looked different in daylight. Not newer, just honest. The perfect decorations from last night seemed a little crooked now, like the house had finally exhaled and stopped pretending. Lucy was flipping pancakes that looked more like geography than food. "Grandpa, you want syrup or dignity on yours?" she asked. "Both," I said. "But pour the dignity slow. My doctor says too much gives you gas." Warren laughed, an honest, belly, deep laugh that reminded me of when he was 8 and thought burping the alphabet was a talent. Kendra even smiled, though I could tell she was still trying to figure out how to apologize without using the word sorry. We ate like people rediscovering what taste feels like. The coffee was too strong, the pancakes half burnt, the bacon doing its best impression of a shoelace, but I swear I'd never had a better meal. Between bites, Warren said quietly, "You know, Dad, I almost didn't send that invitation text." "Oh, I could tell," I said, grinning. "You typed it like a man writing his own confession," he chuckled nervously. "Kendra thought it would make things awkward." I looked at her. "Sweetheart, family is awkward. That's how you know it's real." She blushed, then finally met my eyes. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I thought you'd rather not be around all the chaos." I smiled. "Kendra, chaos built this family. If you take it away, we'll die of peace and quiet." Lucy nearly spit out her juice laughing. "See, Mom? Told you Grandpa's the upgrade this family needed." "Upgrade?" I said. "Honey, I'm the original model. Everything after me's a reboot with more attitude and less patience." They laughed, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was visiting someone else's Christmas. I felt like I'd just come home late to my own. As we cleared the dishes, I caught a glimpse of that framed photo on the counter, the one with the empty chair. Lucy had scribbled something new at the bottom in silver marker. He showed up anyway. I ran my thumb over the words and whispered, "Damn right I did." And somewhere between the smell of burnt pancakes and the sound of laughter echoing off those kitchen walls, I felt Eulalie there too, smiling that quiet, mischievous smile that always meant, "You see? I told you it'd turn out fine." After breakfast, Warren disappeared into the hallway for a minute and came back holding a small, dust-covered box. His face had that nervous look people get when they're about to open something heavier than what it weighs. "I found this in the attic last night," he said, setting it on the table. "Didn't even know we still had it." I squinted at it. "What is it?" "The ashes of your common sense." Lucy burst out laughing. "Grandpa!" Warren rolled his eyes. "Just open it." Inside was a tiny snow globe, the kind we used to sell at the church fair for $1. Inside it, a miniature cabin, pine trees, a figure of a man standing by a window. The base read, "Home is where they remember your chair." My throat went tight. "Your mother made this," I whispered. "She painted it after your first Christmas away at college." Warren nodded. "Yeah, I found it in a box marked for later. I think she knew we'd need it one day." I turned the globe slowly, watching the fake snow swirl like a second chance. Then I shook it once, hard, and said, "There now, it's a blizzard. Perfectly accurate depiction of our family dynamic." Lucy snorted. "I swear, Grandpa, you could ruin a Hallmark movie and still get applause." "Kid," I said, smiling through the ache in my chest, "if you can't laugh while you're remembering, you'll end up crying while you forget." Warren looked at me, really looked at me, and said quietly, "I missed you, Dad." "Don't just say it," I replied. "Keep proving it." He nodded. "Deal." Then Lucy picked up her phone and said, "Okay, everybody squeeze in. We're taking a new picture for the frame with no empty chair this time." We huddled together, crooked smiles, syrup on our sleeves, mismatched sweaters, and as she snapped the photo, Warren put an arm around my shoulder. For the first time in years, the word family didn't feel like a story I used to tell. It felt like something I was in again. I chuckled as Lucy reviewed the photo. "You see that? Still photogenic at 76. "Sure, Grandpa," she said, "but next time maybe smile with both eyes open." "Sweetheart," I said, grinning, "at my age, one eye open means I'm still winning." That evening, the world outside turned soft, a quiet snow, the kind that doesn't fall so much as arrive. The tree lights blinked lazily, and the house smelled like cinnamon, wood polish, and something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Warren was in the kitchen, humming Eulalie's tune, just a little off-key, but still hers. Lucy sat by the fire, editing the photo we'd taken, complaining that I blinked like a man negotiating with death. I told her, "Sweetheart, that's just my resting grandpa face." They laughed, and it was the kind of sound that fills all the rooms you thought were empty. After dinner, I slipped outside for a moment. The cold bit my nose, but I didn't mind. The sky was clear, sharp, and full of stars, each one like a tiny window where Eulalie might be peeking through, making sure I didn't screw up the holiday. "Well, darling," I whispered. "You were right again. They just needed time. And maybe a good old-fashioned guilt trip with a touch of humor." I took out the snow globe and set it on the porch rail. Inside, the man by the window still stood alone, but the cabin didn't look lonely anymore. Maybe it never was. Maybe it was just waiting for someone to knock. When I turned back toward the house, Lucy was at the door, waving me in. "Grandpa, come on, we're starting a new tradition. Pancakes for dessert." "Pancakes for dessert?" I said, smiling. "Blasphemy." "Then you'll fit right in," she called back. I laughed that deep, stubborn laugh Eulalie always said could scare the sadness off a ghost. And for the first time in a long, long time, I didn't feel like an old man visiting life from the outside. I felt like I was home. As I stepped inside, the warmth wrapped around me, and I realized something simple, something beautiful I hadn't been forgotten. I just needed to remind them how to remember. And so, with a full heart and syrup on my sleeve, I raised my mug and said, "Merry Christmas, family. Don't get used to behaving. I'll be back next year." They groaned, laughed, and somewhere above the noise, I swear I heard Eulalie chuckle one last time, the sound of love that refuses to end. You know, life's short. But sometimes one Christmas is enough to bring back everything you thought was lost. If this story touched you, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from, and how old are you? I always wonder where these stories find you. Maybe in a quiet kitchen, on the road, or under a warm blanket just like me once. Because somewhere out there, someone's still waiting to be remembered.